Well, everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the Samsung Galaxy S9 and see how this particular phone holds up in the later part of 2024. Now, the big thing to keep in mind is that in almost every single way I can imagine, I probably would not recommend a single person to go ahead and buy a Samsung Galaxy S9 anymore. This phone has been outdated for the most part with a lot of different software updates since this phone first came out, so it just doesn't make a lot of sense to go and buy this type of phone as of this day and age. There are lots and lots of other phones to buy, luckily for you, that are still fairly cheap, so keep that in mind. Now, the build quality of this phone still feels actually pretty good. You're getting a 5.8-inch Super AMOLED display on the front. It's a 1440p panel, and it actually isn't a bad panel. Like, it still is like a really, really good looking device for the most part. And I do think this device in and of itself is a very, very nice panel, right? I don't really have that much to complain about here. You are basically maintaining things on the outside like a standard glass back. You're getting a USB Type-C port, a headphone jack, and a micro SD card slot. That was in and of itself one of the coolest things that Samsung did here, was to maintain that type of I/O so many years after. And the thing this phone has over a lot of other phones that have came out since then is basically the fact that this phone is still giving you a headphone jack and it's still giving you a micro SD card slot. A majority of phones since this phone's release hasn't really given us that type of capability. So I'm very, very happy that this type of phone is basically giving you that. Like, I'm a massive fan of that when it comes down to it. So that in of itself definitely gets a thumbs up for me, without a doubt. You are getting a single camera setup on the back side with the fingerprint sensor on the back. And overall, what I can definitely tell you on the exterior is that it's a very, very good looking phone still. The only things this phone is missing out on that a lot of phones have nowadays, things like, the no reverse wireless charging, no frosted glass back, no multiple camera setup on the back side, and no high refresh rate on the panel on the front. Otherwise, though, this phone still feels like a pretty good phone for the most part. I would also say that probably the biggest downside of this phone now, and the reason why I wouldn't recommend anyone to buy it anymore, is the lack of software updates. This phone has stopped getting software updates since One UI 2. That in and of itself is kind of a pretty big downside of purchasing a phone like this. Like, there isn't really a big reason to go ahead and buy a phone like this anymore. And the reason for that is because it's already done getting software updates. Had this phone gone through and gotten maybe like 1 or 2 more versions of Android, then maybe it would have still been supported, like if it lasted as long as the Galaxy S21 or something. But for a majority of people out there, it genuinely doesn't make any sense to go ahead and buy a phone like this anymore. You are much better off purchasing devices that are still supported with software. And this device, not only is it not supported with software anymore, it hasn't been supported with software for years now. So you're getting a device that is outdated with security updates. It's an unsecure phone, and if there's ever a hack or anything that comes out in the future, this phone could end up getting, vulnerable for it. So just kind of keep that in mind too. When it comes down to the performance, it's not really like a terrible performing phone, but keep in mind, when I tell you the specifications inside of it, like it's giving you that, the Snapdragon 845 chipset with 4 gigabytes of RAM. That is kind of a low amount of RAM to have. I just, made a review of the Galaxy A05 that came out last year, and that's like a budget, that's like an extreme budget phone from Samsung, and that one has 4 gigabytes of RAM. So you're definitely going to be having like a pretty lackluster experience when it comes down to the performance side, and that's why I would not recommend buying a phone like this when it comes down to the performance aspect of this device. So overall, what I'll tell you is the Galaxy S9 probably is not worth buying in any capacity anymore, unless you want to go and use it as like a side device or like as a modding device or something. Otherwise, I probably would not recommend buying this type of device when it comes down to it. So that pretty much covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. The like button helps me so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.